All right, let's dive right in. We're going to unpack one of the most incredible political strategies of the last century, a game plan that was literally forged in a prison cell and then played out for the whole world to see. This is the Mandela Code, forgiveness as a form of power.
Okay, picture this. In 1990, Nelson Mandela, after spending 27 years locked up for fighting against apartheid, finally walks out of Victor Verster prison. Now, the world expected a revolutionary's rage, right? A fiery call for vengeance, a plan to tear down the whole oppressive system by force. I mean, just imagine that scene. The cameras are going crazy, the entire planet is holding its breath, and everyone, his biggest fans, his actual prison guards, they're all just waiting for the explosion. They were absolutely sure that this man, broken by decades of pure injustice, was about to unleash hell.
So, on one hand, you have what everyone was bracing for, vengeance. You know, a totally justified cry for payback that, let's be honest, would have thrown the country straight into a bloody civil war. But what did Mandela actually deliver? Something completely different. Reconciliation, mercy, a roadmap for stability. He swapped out the guaranteed chaos of revenge for this structured, systematic approach to forgiveness, and it just completely blew everyone's minds. Nobody saw it coming.
And that right there, that's the big question we're going to tackle. Why? I mean, really, after everything he went through, why on earth would he choose the harder path? Why offer an open hand when a clenched fist would have been so much easier, so much more satisfying? Well, let me tell you, this was no emotional, spur-of-the-moment thing. It was a cold, calculated, strategic decision. And figuring out the why is how we unlock his genius.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll start with that moment the world held its breath. Then we'll go back to the Crucible on Robben Island. We're going to unlock the Mandela Code, see it in action, look at its blueprint for the world, and wrap up with the final universal lesson.
Okay, Section 1. The world holds its breath. This is all about the choice that defined a nation. Let's get into it. This choice, it wasn't just about one man. It was about the future of South Africa. You see, while the world saw a political prisoner finally free, Mandela, he saw a chessboard. And he knew with absolute certainty that a nation built on revenge is like a house built on sand. It's just doomed to fall apart.
And this, right here, is where his code begins. He had this game-changing insight. The only way to build a stable, unified South Africa was to bring his enemies into the fold. So how do you do that? Simple. You take away their biggest fear, payback. He knew the white minority government was absolutely terrified. They were expecting to be punished, thrown out of the country, or worse. So by promising them safety, by guaranteeing they had a place in the new South Africa, he wasn't just being a good guy. No, this was pure strategy. He was turning his biggest threat into a partner he couldn't afford to lose. This was move number 1 in his master plan to use mercy as a weapon of political control.
But listen, a philosophy this radical, it doesn't just pop into your head. It has to be forged in fire. And for Mandela, that fire was Robben Island. That's where he learned to turn total isolation into a weapon, not of hate, but of pure strategic understanding. 27. Just think about that number. Let it sink in for a second. 27 years. A whole lifetime for some people. That kind of time in a prison is designed to utterly crush a person's spirit. But Mandela, he refused to let it break him. Instead, he turned that brutal, lonely existence into his own personal university. He realized the iron bars, they weren't the real prison.
And that led him to this incredible realization he called self-imprisonment. He figured out that hate, bitterness, the desire for revenge, that was its own kind of prison. It traps your mind, it drains your energy. And he knew if he was going to lead his country to freedom, he first had to break out of that prison inside his own head. That was the game changer, the big psychological leap he had to make.
So you're probably wondering, how did he actually do it? Well, it wasn't just by wishing and hoping. It was through hard, disciplined, intellectual work. He basically put himself through a masterclass in what we can call strategic empathy. He made himself learn Afrikaans, the language of the very people who locked him up. He dove into their history, he even read their poetry. He needed to get inside their heads to understand their culture, what they were afraid of, how they saw the world. And look, this wasn't about some mushy sentimental forgiveness. No way. This was about understanding his enemy so he could predict their next move, find their weaknesses, and, when the time came, figure out how to lead them. He was turning his oppressors into a scientific study.
Okay, so this brings us right to the heart of it all, unlocking the Mandela Code. This is the philosophy of gaining power, not by pushing mercy aside, but by using it as your primary tool.
So here's the central formula, the core equation of the Mandela Code. It's simple.
Moral authority is more powerful than political leverage. He was convinced that real, lasting power, the kind that builds nations that last, the kind that inspires people for centuries, it doesn't come from guns or secret deals or clever political tricks. It comes from owning the moral high ground. Period. He saw reconciliation not as a nice feeling, but as an absolutely essential strategy for keeping the country from falling apart.
And this whole code is built on three main pillars. First up, you've got the Strategic Reconciliation Mandate, basically using mercy as a tool for national security. Second, there's the Self-Imprisonment Avoidance Rule, which is all about the discipline to get rid of bitterness so you can focus all your energy on what actually matters. And third, the Institutionalized Truth, which became the famous Truth and Reconciliation Commission, using total transparency to create stability.
All right, so we've got the philosophy down, but how do you actually put it into action? I mean, how do you take these big, abstract ideas and make them a real national strategy that millions of people can actually see and believe in? You've got to make it real. You've got to make it tangible.
Mandela's secret weapon was symbolic communication. He knew that writing up a bunch of government policies about reconciliation would mean absolutely nothing to the average person on the street. It's just paper. But a single powerful public symbol, that could change everything overnight. He had to show people unity, not just tell them about it. And there is no better example of this than the 1995 Rugby World Cup. Now, you have to understand, the Springboks rugby team, with their green and gold jersey, for black South Africans, that was the ultimate symbol of apartheid. They hated it. So of course, Mandela's advisors were all telling him, you have to scrap it, get rid of it. But what did he do? The exact opposite. He went all in, embracing the team. And then came that legendary moment. He walks out onto the field for the final, wearing that Springboks jersey himself. With that one single gesture, he completely disarmed the fears of millions of white South Africans. And at the same time, he sent a powerful message to millions of black South Africans. Our future isn't about getting rid of the past. It's about building something new together. It was an absolute masterclass in using symbols to lead. And this way of thinking, it didn't just change South Africa. It literally created a blueprint for the rest of the world. See, Mandela's legacy isn't just about his own country. It's about the model he gave to any nation trying to heal after a terrible conflict. I mean, just look at this journey. It's unbelievable. In the 60s, he was officially labeled a terrorist, not just by the apartheid government, but by Western powers too. Fast forward to the 80s, and he's the most famous political prisoner on the planet. Then 1990 hits, he walks free, and boom, he's a symbol of freedom. 1994, he's president of a new nation. And by the 2000s, he's become something more, a global moral figure, a true icon of peace. Now, a transformation like that doesn't just happen by chance. It was the direct result of him sticking to the Mandela Code, no matter what.
But maybe his biggest legacy is something concrete, something other countries could actually copy. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission, or TRC. This was a wild idea at the time. It was kind of like a court, but instead of just punishing people, victims got to tell their stories, and the people who committed atrocities could come forward and ask for amnesty. The point wasn't just revenge. It was about getting the truth out there so everyone could agree on what happened. And this model for healing, it's been used all over the world since then, in places like Rwanda and Colombia.
And that brings us to our final and maybe most important lesson. We're going to boil this whole grand strategy down to something we can all use, because the same code that rebuilt an entire nation, well, it also holds the key to our own freedom. It's about forgiveness as an act of intentional liberation. Think about it. Nelson Mandela had all the power he needed to completely crush his old enemies. He had the political backing, he had the love of the people, and God knows he had the moral justification. But he understood something so much deeper. The highest, truest form of power is choosing not to use it. Holding back when everyone is screaming for you to strike, that is the ultimate show of strength. It proves you're not just in control of the situation, you're in control of yourself.
And that's what the Mandela Code is. It's the blueprint for that kind of power. It's a system built on two things: the hard mental work of strategic empathy and the even harder emotional work of disciplined self-control. You put those two together and you have an incredibly powerful system for getting things done.
In the end, this is the lesson that echoes from that prison cell on Robben Island across the decades. Whether you are leading a nation or navigating your own life, the principle holds. The grudges you hold, the bitterness you harbor, these are chains. Forgiveness, when used strategically, is not an act of weakness. It is an act of intentional liberation. It frees your energy, neutralizes your opposition, and builds an unshakable foundation. It reminds us that in any conflict, in any negotiation, your greatest political weapon is your moral authority.